Please welcome Seema Verma back to the stage.
Well, welcome back. We are excited to have another panel here lined up. All right, so we've heard a lot about, or just this morning's panels, we had a little bit of a patient perspective, we had the tech perspective, and now we have a great panelist to talk about the provider perspective. So I want each of us to kind of go through and talk, each of you to just talk about your organization and how you are thinking about AI. Stephanie, why don't we start with you?
Well, thank you for having me. We have an incredible organization that is the largest in West Central Florida. We have over almost 34,000 team members. And the way we think about AI is our mission to improve the lives of all we serve. And the way we can do that is to enable our 34,000 team members to be bold and progressive in their thinking and to partner to utilize AI in a way that helps them deliver that exceptional care that we're known for. So we're very excited about the future and utilizing the AI tools and your agents that Oracle's providing to enhance the care that we deliver every single day.
That's great. So it doesn't sound like there's any hesitation on your part or for your organization.
No, and as we continue the conversation, I'll share we're already using and utilizing some of the tools. I will say that our focus is our team because they are our greatest asset. And if we give them the runway to be the best of who they can be by utilizing those AI technologies and the agents, only good things can come from that. So we're very excited about it.
That's great.
Yeah.
Tom?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having us here. We're excited to be here. AI at Cleveland Clinic, at least the way we were thinking about it currently, is being deployed in several strategic areas that are important for patient care. We have applications that are really there to enhance patient care, such as AI detection of sepsis. Then we have applications that are there to improve caregiver experience. Probably one of the most popular one was AI-based scribes, which is the only digital application ever that we rolled out that people were uniformly excited about. And the last bucket, so to say, of AI applications is around the improvement of our functionality. Everything from a throughput through the hospital to the revenue cycle management and so on. But what we are really, really excited about is not just to create this patchwork of AI applications, but that together we envision the entirely new ecosystem of healthcare delivery that is going to have AI solutions at the core of it.
Dr. Gray?
Yeah,
Thank you, Mayo.
Again, thank you. At Mayo Clinic, the way we're thinking about it is what's in the best interest of patients, but also what's not working in healthcare. How should healthcare work? And all of us would agree that healthcare should be more personalized, more proactive, more precise, and importantly, more affordable. So I think that's the way we're thinking about it. How can AI be a tool to further those goals within healthcare? And then two philosophical pieces are that we've taken a grassroots approach to AI implementation, to saying the people that are experts in their fields, working day to day with patients, they know what are the things that need to be improved, and we want those ideas to come up from the grassroots. So getting that idea out there, getting some AI education out there, so those ideas can come forward, and then we can continue to mature those and pull those together. And then taking a very open platform approach. We don't know who's going to have the best ideas, but we know for sure Mayo Clinic isn't going to have all of the best ideas. And so how do we facilitate that idea of the best ideas emerging and making those available to as many people to benefit as many patients as possible and share those ideas across the healthcare ecosystem? So we've established Mayo Clinic platform to try to accomplish that.
Paul, a little bit more about the research, clinical trials, and pharma perspective.
Yeah, no, thank you, Seema. Good morning, everybody. Look, I work for Amgen. We're a biotechnology company, and we really did embrace AI starting about 18 months ago. And we actually formed an organization, and I, as Chief Medical Officer, actually sit in Dave Reese's technology organization, which is quite unusual. So I think it says that we recognize the power of AI and what it can bring to a company like Amgen. And you know, it's interesting, I've been thinking about the book, The Innovator's Dilemma, by Clay Christensen. And he talks in there about how companies often want to be right at the cutting edge of a new technology. And we do. We use it to try and speed our enrollment into clinical trials, to funnel patients very specifically into clinical trials. We're certainly thinking about it as we use AI to interrogate massive data sets. But there's even simple things that you can do. Just getting your organization to play with some of the tools. Nate mentioned OpenAI. We have clearly a strong association with them, and we've been able to roll that out to a large part of our organization. So people are just using it in their everyday working lives. Cuts down a huge amount of time, and then of course you can bring it to bear on these hugely complex questions, or just to analyze massive data. So we've absolutely embraced it. We're trying to institute it into all the fabric of Amgen, and the results we're seeing have been transformational.
I think is interesting, as Nate talked about, if you build it, will they come? And what's interesting is that you all are already using AI, and that you've started with your workforce, right? You're starting with kind of almost like a grassroots effort to kind of start at the ground level. So Stephanie, I know the people part of this has been really important to you. We'll talk a little bit more about how you're thinking about the human use of AI.
Absolutely. And that's very well said, because our people are delivering that extraordinary care. And if we give them tools such as Nurse Voice, I'm going to use that as an example. We're one of the pioneers in this space. I'm fortunate to be, I would say, proof of concept with Oracle in our organization. And our team is part of the build. And what this enables us to do is develop this Nurse Voice in a way that is most effective for the nurse in delivering care. So ultimately, we're giving our team members, who are our greatest asset, those tools to improve their work and avoid being in the computer the majority of the time and able to make eye contact with the patient at the bedside. That is an amazing accomplishment in itself. But think about the AI agent in the future helping to identify risk factors for patients as they're delivering that care. So we are quite excited at being at the forefront and being bold with you, thinking differently, non-traditional, and creating the future of healthcare.
That's great. So Tom, I know in our conversations, you've been thinking about the application of AI specifically in primary care. Tell us a little bit more about how you're thinking of that.
Well, I think it is really important to realize that one of the fundamental requests that we have from any society, any country, any community, is to facilitate access to reproducible, scalable, but also affordable healthcare. And there is no country that has really managed to do it, in particular not the countries of a size and a complexity like the United States. So access to primary care, I believe all of us will agree about it, is a real limiter. It's a real limiter, and probably one of the most important determinants for the health of any nation, in this case in the United States. So back on the original idea, we do not believe that the delivery of a primary care will be able to be scaled if we just keep on trying to do more and more of what we're already doing. But re-envisioning the environment and the ecosystem of primary healthcare delivery with the new AI tools is a very interesting opportunity. So what we're speaking here is a development of AI tools, but then also staffing standards, procedural standards, as well as a physical environment in which primary care is delivered that should allow us to provide scalable and affordable primary care for the country and for the world. If you just think about it for a moment, each of us obviously here is in healthcare in one way or another, and each of us has walked in a primary care office. Have you ever walked into two primary care offices that look the same? The fundamental aspect of healthcare delivery, the primary care, is woefully not standardized. And obviously the results are predictable. If you have something that is that serves millions and millions of patients that is so fragmented and not standardized, the results are the ones that we're currently having. So I think this different approach to primary care, I think it's going to be potentially truly transformative.
Dr. Gray, one of the things that we were talking about this a little bit last night, but a lot of questions about what does this look like in 5 years? And I'm going to have you all answer that question, but in particular, medical education. And how is the Mayo Clinic thinking about that? You educate lots of young minds. So how is that, how are you thinking about AI and how it comes into play with medical education in particular?
Yeah, I feel like all of us who have gotten to a certain age, we look at the next generation with skepticism, right? Oh, they don't work as hard as us. They've got ChatGPT to answer all their questions. And I do think there is a natural worry that the presence of many of these tools along that education pathway may decrease some of the fundamentals that physicians, nurses, other healthcare providers have along the way. And really, we've had this with every technology, right? Just go back to calculators. In the 1970s, people said, oh, now that there's calculators, no one will know how to do arithmetic. I can still do arithmetic in my head. But I have a tool that also helps me and has expanded what I can do beyond the original mathematics learning. And that's really how I view AI tools in education. I actually think there's a lot of hope from integrating these. We know from education that if someone gets one-on-one tutoring, it can move their performance up as much as 2 standard deviations. And we can't scale one-on-one tutoring of every pre-med student, every medical student, every trainee. But if we put these tools into their hands and help them to understand how it can be used as a thought partner and an expert that sits beside them during their studies, it's close to having that one-on-one tutoring that can accelerate education. I think there will be a more of a call, as we talked about last night then, for doing non-standardized time periods of education because people can progress faster or slower, and that's been very difficult to break through. But the fundamental building blocks, I believe, can still be there. We can still do great education. And the final piece is we have to educate all of our workforce. How do we integrate these tools? What do you trust? What do you have skepticism about? How do you integrate them into solving those problems we were talking about? And so we now have an endowed fund for educating all of our workforce around AI and continuous improvement in educating the workforce as the technology advances. And that's going to be extremely important. It's not just educating this next generation, putting them out into practice. It's going to be then continuing to educate them thereafter.
Well, you hit on something that I think is a really important issue, right? When we talk about AI solving long-standing problems in healthcare, right? One of them is the expense of educating a physician and the length of time. So, could it shorten the period of time? Could it make it less expensive?
It's a possibility. I think it's been structural problems that have held us back. If you have a trainee come out of medical school and goes into a particular residency program, we all know there are some that progress through that hitting competency milestones faster than others. But the structure is such that they're integrated into the workflows of an entire organization. And to have it be unpredictable who's going to be there when is a very difficult challenge that we've spent decades trying to overcome. So AI doesn't solve all of our problems because there are basic structural issues that we still have to address. And so there will still be a lot of challenges in reaping some of those rewards that it could bring. And we need to not just leave it to AI to do that. We have to do the hard work of the systems being better to take advantage of the opportunity.
So Paul, go to you, and maybe start with the larger policy issue, right? Which is the high cost of drugs, and we kind of go back to the roots of why drugs cost a lot of money, because it takes a lot to develop these drugs, billions of dollars. How are you thinking about the application of AI and how it can actually streamline clinical trials and make them go quicker and faster? And will it have an impact actually on bringing down the time it takes to bring a new drug to market?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, this intersection of AI, huge data sets, and digital medicine is going to be revolutionary. I think as well for us at Amgen and for many in the pharma industry, the holy grail, if you will, is can you use AI to either identify new biological pathways and then actually predict therapeutics, an antibody, a small molecule, whatever it might be, that could target that with therapeutic benefit. So we look at that continuum from discovery. We certainly use AI now. We bought a company called Decode Genetics in Iceland years ago that has petabytes, 1 with 15 zeros of bytes of data there. We have to have an NVIDIA computer stack there just to interrogate it. But we can go in there and we can look for signals for cardiometabolic disease and come up with these proteomic risk scores, which then will identify patients who are at higher risk of having a cardiovascular event and who would also benefit from a particular kind of medicine. So we're trying to get AI rapidly into the discovery phase. And then, as you say, clinical trials are hugely expensive. They take a long time. Many of the sites that we go to don't actually enroll a patient. They can't always find patients. So we have another use of AI for a platform that we call Atomic, which can profile thousands and thousands of different clinical trial sites here in the US and around the world, and kind of match sites to particular protocols where they'll be most efficient. And then finally, and so that will speed time, I think, to enrollment into trials, which really is it's a long process. It takes, 7 to 10 years to go from bench to approval. And the approval process also is really long. I've spent 25 years in the pharma industry now, and I have a colleague, our head of regulatory, often talks about how we would put these clinical trial filings in trucks. Everybody would stand by the truck, right, with a photo that they would have on their desk. And that would drive down to the FDA, boxes and boxes and boxes. Well, now, thankfully, we don't have to do that. But to put a file together to submit can easily take 24 or 26 weeks. That's kind of industry standard. Our aspiration is to get that down to maybe 6 to 10 weeks, and we're doing that now. But we're doing it by using artificial intelligence. You don't need a team of writers toiling away, putting documents together. You can use structured content authoring. You can put these submissions together. A clinical study report would have taken 4 or 5 weeks. We actually generated one in 72 minutes with high quality. Imagine that. So I think AI is a phenomenal tool. You have to think about where you're going to shine it, what problem you're going to put it on. But for us at Amgen, for other pharma companies, I think it's going to substantially shrink down that whole continuum from discovery all the way through to filing, and will help make the patient journey to a clinical trial. We heard that beautifully from Michelle earlier. More seamless, get to the right trial quicker, get a better clinical outcome. So it's huge.
So Cleveland Clinic, Mayo Clinic do a lot of research. How are you thinking about AI specifically in research, and kind of building on what Paul said, is there a way to do this that's faster, right? So if we think about digital twins, for example, if we think about even the process of the data submission, right? Could you just do it all from the EHR? So any thoughts in terms of brainstorming about how you're thinking about doing research?
Yeah, I think some meshes well with what Paul talked about, being more targeted in what we're pursuing. So using tools that are available from others like AlphaFold to better understand the structures that we're trying to target and narrow down some of the efforts so there's fewer dead-end opportunities that we're pursuing, to just improving the process. Even in our Grassroots AI tools, we now have an AI module that acts a little bit like TurboTax, just asks the investigators questions as they go that they fill out, that if they get to the end of the road, and this is going to be software as a medical device that needs to go to the FDA, it can auto-populate that submission. But it also keeps them on track on the way through. And then with Mayo Clinic platform, we have found that number one, we can produce good synthetic data. We can produce synthetic data that might allow us to have many more trials where there doesn't have to be a placebo arm or a control arm, and we can effectively try the new intervention, the new drug, whatever it may be, and have a very reasonable control arm, but complete that quicker and perhaps more ethically by just having an intervention arm with a synthetic data arm of that as well. And then finally, just pulling out insights. We have a relatively new chairperson of neurosurgery who just came to Mayo Clinic not too long ago and said, hey, for some of these brain tumors, let's just pull out of Mayo Clinic platform, what are some associations with improved survival? And to our surprise, and to her surprise, one of the factors was what anti-seizure medication was used for these patients postoperatively. That would have been something that we never would have imagined to look into, that would make a difference. And so that has prompted then a prospective trial to see if we can validate that. So I think being more targeted, being more efficient in the process, having insights into what might be a dead end are key factors that we're looking at.
Yeah, I think we can speak a lot about the various applications of artificial intelligence and computational power to accelerate discovery. And I think there's really important for all of us to understand how blessed all of us are that we have those tools that many of us in earlier parts of our careers could only dream of. I couldn't even dream about it. But, we're just thinking about, let's say, just raw computational power. We're very fortunate to have the only quantum computer in biomedical world at Cleveland Clinic, and just an ability to use that platform to simulate the protein three-dimensional configuration, which is essential for creation of some of the efficient therapies for cancer and many autoimmune diseases and many other conditions. Extremely exciting. So what we're really speaking about here is a clinical application of computational biology. When we went through medical school, computational biology did not exist as a term. Today, that is a real term. It's the use of a computational power to advance medical science, and it's really at a discovery phase, as Paul was speaking, as a translational phase, and then ultimately at the clinical applicational phase. So I think this is just absolutely exciting, and it's phenomenal. I'm just watching, and I'm in awe. I'm in awe. I still remember, and I come from this generational gap when you need to go to the library and then find references, and then there was a copy machine, and then you would copy those references, and then it would carry it always with you, and then you lose a half. You didn't read the rest. It's different now,
right?
And it's for better.
Seema, can I just add, just to build on that, who's tried deep research? Part of the OpenAI offering. I mean, it's like having a postdoc right beside you.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. And a 24/7 postdoc.
Yeah.
Works very hard. Doesn't take vacation. Always there.
So Stephanie, with your organization, do these tools make you think a little bit differently about doing more research inside your organization?
They do. We actually currently are the fastest growing residency program in the country. We're very focused on our academic mission. And when I listen, I want to obviously talk all about the opportunities of the future as we advance our clinical trials. I heard Michelle and about Aiden and the impact it would have had if there was a coordination of care. So what I would like to comment on is take that back down a little bit to the basics of where we're going in the future. At no time do I think AI will replace nurses or physicians. I'm asked that question often. When you embrace technology and you're bold and you think differently, people will say, well, what will happen? What I believe will happen is a better coordination of care, identification of the tools and systems that are available to our community so that no patient ever needs to leave our community, let alone our state, for care. So how do we better coordinate care and collaborate to bring the greatest advancements into the environments where people live, love, play, and care at the right place, right time, with the right provider? All of these AI tools are going to enable us to do that much better. And with our counterparts across the country, we often think, what clinical trials are at other organizations? We have clinical trials. We're very focused on our research and our academic mission, but there's no perfect healthcare organization. We all want to believe that, obviously I do believe this, our team is unmatched and delivers the most extraordinary care, but there's no perfection. Without the coordination of care and the future of really being bold and thinking of the art of the possible in the spaces that were just articulated, that brings care where you need it and when you need it and how you need it. So I don't think that AI will ever replace a healthcare provider, because you need that compassion, you need that human interaction as well as just the human thought process, but it can augment and it can support in the coordination of care so that no patient is left wondering, did I make a mistake? Should have I asked more questions? What's available to me? And I do believe with the AI technologies and what we're talking about, all of those advances should be brought into the communities where they live.
That's great. So we've talked about research, talked about kind of the impact on providers, but one area that I know drives a lot of providers crazy are those interactions with payers. And so as you're thinking about the friction between payers and providers, how are you thinking about AI? I know that there's also a lot of concerns with AI and payers. So anybody want to take a stab at that one?
Well, I can start. I think, at dinner last night we were talking about we're already in a world where it's our bots versus their bots in terms of the back and forth. And Arizona this year was one state among several who passed legislation that said when there is a denial from a payer for care, that there has to be a human in the loop on that. And I think we will see more and more of that, where people are concerned about this interaction, because there's a lot of promise on our side, right? It's a huge burden to get, and you talked about this in your opening, of making sure that we get pre-authorization, that we get the right documentation in and so forth. It's a burden on the payer side for them to review all of that back and forth. So it's natural for us to think a lot of this can be automated, and it can, and it should. And we should make it much more efficient. And that's probably, one of the areas across all of healthcare that has been most impacted tangibly by AI, is some of that back office type work for efficiency and revenue cycle type work. But we're going to have to figure out what the trust level is going to be and the degree of automation in all aspects of AI. And this is just one more, where I'm not sure we need legislation, and especially a patchwork of legislation across every state, but that's going to be the approach. We're concerned about somebody automating this, even in that type of interaction, and it behooves all of us to have humans in the loop until and unless the automation is demonstrated to be truly trustworthy. And in doing that process, it will build the trust that will allow us to move forward.
I can add to that. So when you think about the payer and provider relationship, the leveling of care and the appropriateness of care, and also your value-based care, there are two distinct areas I believe that AI can be supportive. One is, as we're trying to appropriately deliver care, real-time data to support actions that our providers are taking, because you don't want to overutilize, and that we're known in healthcare, unfortunately, not to be as focused on the utilization. So I do believe the AI tools will support that. But also, let's take it one step further, care at the right place. We're working very hard on the hospital at home model. And how do you move care out of the most expensive environment into an environment that's better for the patient and their outcomes, but still have the appropriate reimbursement so that you can provide that quality of care. So that leveling is incredibly important, married with the appropriateness of care. And I believe AI can give that the real-time analytics that are necessary, not only to make good decisions, but also to get support for payment from those that are on the payer side.
Tom, your favorite subject?
My favorite subject, yeah. So you lived in that world.
I did, that's why I'm asking.
For quite a few years.
I've worn lots of hats, yeah.
And I think one of the, just for us in the United States to realize, what are the costs of inefficiencies associated with this process of denials and so on. We know it's about, 15 to 20% of US healthcare cost is administrative, meaning non-contributor to the actual patient care. That is tremendous. For what we're speaking about right now, administrative cost that relates just to denials and actually our ability to collect is someplace between 3 to 6 cents on the dollar. It is really difficult to find 6% efficiency in anything. This is a non-contributory, it's just a pure waste of money. I think humans in the loop are really, really important, but only if we continue to assume something that I think should be viewed critically, and that is that humans are really better than machines are going to be. There is only an assumption that current process with a heavy human involvement, I'll make a solid argument, I'll make an argument at least that it's very imperfect and highly inaccurate, and not objective at all, or not very objective. So I do believe that this is one of those real opportunities to introduce efficiency, save money at scale, so that can allow us to invest those much needed dollars into actual care of our patients.
Now, Paul, there's a lot of issues between pharmaceutical companies and insurance companies, PBMs. So your thoughts on where do you see AI helping or reducing friction between the two?
I think, the only add I would have to all those excellent comments, I think, is that for companies like us, we typically deal at the population health level, right? You all do as well, but I think what all of those organizations want is to make database decisions as much as possible of complex questions. They want to do comparative analyses, which either would be really difficult to do or would just take a long time. And so AI comes in there. But we do have medicines that, it's like every patient one at a time if necessary. And so we use it there as well to try and demonstrate the value to an individual patient who's best to get it, why they're a good candidate for it. So, and again, they're using some of those like proteomic tools can bolster your case. So I think it, again, is a very valuable way to support your argumentation, either at large population levels or individual patient levels. So those would be the kind of the key things.
So Dr. Gray, you brought up the topic of trust, right? So if we think about AI and trust, right? Mike Cecilia talked about guardrails with the AI. How are you thinking about that? So Stephanie, maybe you start with kind of that line between where the human is, where do you trust the AI, and what are the guardrails? How are you thinking about that?
Making it clear to those that are delivering care that AI cannot replace them and that they have to be a part of the solutions for the future. So embracing those individuals that will utilize the AI technology, because there's always going to be the human interaction with AI, whether that's adjusting the technology, advancing the technology, educating on the technology. We need to make sure that those that are your utilizers are a part of the creation, because once they're involved and they see the benefits, not only will they embrace it, but they'll make it better. So our feeling is, in all the work we're doing with the AI artificial intelligence, those that are at the front lines that will benefit most are part of the development, and that's in great collaboration. We are one of Oracle's long-standing partners, and we just love the vision of thinking differently on where the AI artificial intelligence can go, not necessarily where it is today. So I'll just end on my statement with those humans need to be involved. And once they're involved, I feel that it no longer becomes a threat and the excitement is palpable. And the individuals that are about to experience the support at the bedside or in the community by the artificial intelligence will be our greatest spokesperson.
That's great. Anyone else?
I mean, the ongoing verification of any tool in healthcare is always going to be necessary, and AI tools I don't think they're going to be an exception to that. It is interesting, I'll just share with you, and this is something that I'm sure many have experienced in the audience. So one of the first experiences with AI was when we started implementing these bots to answer the questions of our patients. They were submitting us by email, and everybody was really concerned about the machine answering those questions. And we chose obviously appropriate areas, low risk, but high utilization, simple questions. And then we asked our patients what did they think about the answers that they were getting either from caregivers or were getting from AI. And to our chuckle and surprise, they thought that, first of all, AI responses were far more timely. They were much more compassionate and humane. They were way more detailed, and that was it. So I think it is, you start with this inherent skepticism. Well, it cannot be as good as humans. But then you kind of land to the point where, maybe it can be as good or even better. It is just how you construct it, what are the data that you use to develop it. You obviously have to keep on reevaluating to my initial point, but that was just a hilarious first experience with some of our AI applications that happened several years back.
And I do think those expectations are important for us to keep in mind. Some of us are techno-optimists, but there are a lot of people that have a great degree of skepticism. And we have to keep reminding ourselves that we are far from perfect. There are still too many mistakes made in healthcare. There are still too many judgment calls that are based on a limited sphere of experience. And to bring tools alongside that will make those better won't make it perfect, but it makes it better. And that's the key factor that I think we have to keep in mind is it won't be perfect. There will be mistakes made, but there are mistakes made today by human beings every day. But right now, people are not ready to be forgiving of machines making mistakes. Phoenix happens to be one of the areas where Waymo has been most active in having their autonomous drive share, if you call it that drive share, but having transporting people autonomously. And several years back, a Waymo vehicle was going down the road and a pedestrian darted out from between two parked cars directly in front of it, was struck by the car, and it shut down the Waymo process in Phoenix for a significant period of time. Now, no human being driving that car in that exact situation would have avoided striking that pedestrian, but people would have been forgiving of a human driver. They would have understood that it was a difficult situation. But when it was a machine, an autonomous machine, they immediately called for, hey, this is dangerous, shut it down. So it's that dynamic and that level of expectation that we have to deal with. And I think it was a great point of how do we get our people involved so that it will build trust with them, but then it has to translate to the users as well. So we just have to be ready for the fact that there will be skepticism, there will be a lack of forgiveness, a very high expectation of machines, and manage to that.
That's a great point. Paul?
Maybe the only things I would add are that we have tried HCP educators, and to Tom's good point, they're far more empathetic and caring than human beings, and they've been effective. I know that when we send what we call medical science liaisons into systems, have a robust discussion about data, with an HCP or a system, it has an impact around improving diagnostic quality and funneling people to care. Our issue is reach and frequency. We just didn't have enough people. But we are developing those kind of AI tools. We have one, you mentioned names, we call this one Lisa. And Lisa saves 75 hours per month of MSL time just by doing simple things like transcribing an interaction in general terms into a system. So, it can be highly effective there. We have governance over that. We have oversight. We do have humans in the loop. I think to Rick's point, something will go wrong and there can be an overreaction to it because it's something new that we're all not quite certain how to use yet. But the utility is huge for these types of things.
So I've asked you a lot of questions. What questions do you have for each other?
I think, look, from our side, there's a couple of statistics that I think about a lot, that maybe this is for Tom, Rick, and Stephanie. In this country, only 12% of people have health literacy that is sufficient to be able to navigate the healthcare system that they live in today. Only 12%. That's statistic one. I think about that a lot. The other statistic comes from an article published by the Mayo Clinic, 2017. James Nason is the first author. And the Mayo looked at, and I'm sure Tom would have the same kind of data, they looked at the people who went there for a second opinion. 88% of people who went to the Mayo for a second opinion left with a altered or different diagnosis. Can you believe that? 88%. So 12% of people only can navigate the system. And most people during their disease journey are going to have an inaccurate diagnosis. We kind of heard that, right, from Michelle. And we know that the number one thing to do as a physician is make a diagnosis, come up with a treatment plan. And Seema, you mentioned digital twins, and I love that idea. So maybe the question I would have is, do you truly see a world where we can actually bring this massive opportunity to life without people saying, well, I don't know, that's a bit risky. What about if something crashes? What are we going to do? How do you see a world where we could have digital twins that truly enhance the patient journey, create better outcome, and what's going to be needed from all of us to kind of institute that radical, innovative change?
Maybe I can start by offering at least another little story and experience of how transformative artificial intelligence can be in the daily life of patients and caregivers. We have a hospital in Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates, and one of the biggest challenges in any environment is when we come and speak with the patients, it's really difficult for a patient who is there for a reason, obviously, therefore not maybe in the best spirits or maybe in pain and discomfort, to really comprehend everything that we are sharing with them. And then being able to really understand it and then interpret it to their loved ones. And then there is obviously difficult to access caregivers. Nurses, doctors are not always available. So we have this really interesting experience in Abu Dhabi when we used an AI interface and that communicated between the patients and the caregivers in a very, very interesting way. So a patient who was, in this case, Arabic speaking, can ask the question in Arabic. That gets translated into a provider who typically speaks English as a perfect question. And then it can be translated back to the patient. So that avatar that is always on a wall of a patient room projected actually interacts with the patient. And patients, speaking about literacy, can say, I really do not understand this. Could you simplify it for me? And that question can be asked not once during the day, during the rounds, but 5, 10, 15 times during the day. And that same question can be asked to the avatar by the family members. So how transformative is that? And so I think there is a lot that technology could do to improve these fundamental shortcomings of care today, and that is communication and actually an access of our patients to our caregivers that in this case can be essentially without limits. I think it is just a powerful example, and this is happening today, not in some distant future. This is happening today. I think these type of avatars are going to, in my opinion, become just a regular feature of every hospital room in the future.
I would add, it goes back to the coordination of care. When you talk about health literacy, we can really confuse our patients because we don't always talk to each other. And then you have the patient portal on top of it. And there's immediate access, which is a wonderful thing. But how do we better utilize the patient portal in the future so that our community knows how to ask the right questions and to the right individuals? Because that coordination of care sometimes is behind now the access that they can receive individually. And you're right, since the literacy isn't there, there is great confusion. So I do feel the future is very dependent on the patient portal and how we build that, but then create that coordination of care so those questions can be answered. I'd also add that we all know as clinicians that science and diagnosis is usually a process of elimination. And as you're dealing with patients, it depends on the information that they give you. And sometimes when they see physicians for second opinions or start to expand their reach, there's new information that is either communicated or found, and that lack of coordination or the lack that where the patient portals don't communicate with each other also creates that confusion. So I think there's a lot of opportunity in the future to develop that patient portal in a way that creates a better coordination of care.
Yeah, and I'm also optimistic that we can make inroads on that, but I would go back to what I said earlier, that AI is a tool that will help us to get there. It's not something magical that will solve our ills for us, because there are many other pieces within the system that we will still have to tackle and make better. And we have to set the expectations that it will take toil, hard work, and incremental change to do that. And to best do that, it's going to take all of us sharing those best solutions, as I referred to earlier. You talked about some of the statistics from Mayo Clinic. If Mayo Clinic comes up with a solution that helps us get to a better diagnosis, and we keep it only for the patients that come to Mayo Clinic, that is a problem. That is a problem for society. That is a problem for healthcare. And that's really, again, that more open platform approach. As we develop these tools, we believe is going to be incredibly important. I referred to Mayo Clinic platform before, and that has created an ecosystem, a partnership, and an expectation of sharing. So the distributed data network for it is across 4 continents. It's to give that breadth and depth and heterogeneity of data to make and validate models so that they are more broadly applicable, not just at a particular organization or at a particular region. And then the rules of the road are whoever participates in Mayo Clinic platform to develop or validate their models will make the models available on the platform to any healthcare organization that wants to be on the platform, participate, and take those models in to benefit them. A little bit like an ultimate app store, right, of the solutions. And if we can create more systems like that, where we have better mechanisms to create and validate models that will help us, but then make it in a way that's A, sustainable, but B, can help everyone, then we start to see that accelerate much more than if we're all trying to solve the same problems in different places for our different patient populations.
That's great.
So let me ask you a question. Since you're asking us to do a question,
right.
so we'll turn the tables here a little bit. If you were, since you have a very thorough understanding of U.S. healthcare system, and it's large, what do you think would be a necessary, what should happen in the United States that we can, so that we can take the biggest advantage of these technological advances most rapidly and for the largest number of patients? In other words, what do we need to do in order to prepare healthcare industry to take advantage of these of artificial intelligence for the benefit of our patients?
Well, I'm going to start by saying I hope government kind of steps aside on this one. You know, government's been toiling with all kinds of solutions and they haven't been able to figure it out. So I think that my hope is that they're supportive of AI, that they may be funding in some areas, you know, especially when we talk about rural and community hospitals that really may not be able to afford to avail some of these solutions. So I think in that point, I'm hoping government stays there. I'm hoping that, you know, we need safety, we need some guardrails, but I think it's early for the regulators to come in, and coming in too early could shut this down and it could delay innovation. I think it's important for the private sector in this moment to stand up and to use AI. I don't think there's ever a single bullet to solving any healthcare problem. But when we think about AI, we think about the things that we've talked about today. So I'll just take one, access issues, right? That's become a much harder issue. I think we were talking about this last night, that I used to give speeches on single-payer systems and compare single-payer systems. The reality is access is a problem all over the world, and people are having problems getting appointments. But if we think about the patient portal that we just unveiled, the ability to ask it questions and to get answers, and to your point, repetitively, that could actually create a situation where lower acuity care is handled by AI, right? And so that we create a little bit more capacity in the system. When we talk about quality of care, right? So that's something where quality does vary. It does matter where you go. The ability to be able to provide tools on the front line so that we do level the quality. And I think your point, so I think that's an important thing that AI can do, that it can really help us, well, this is the standard of care, more evidence-based treatment guidelines. And when I put on my payer hat, right, you'll hear from them, well, our concern is that providers may or may not be practicing in an evidence-based way. Okay, well, now that's right there, right? So you start to kind of get rid of a lot of the friction. When we think about the high costs of healthcare, right, 25–30% of the healthcare dollar is all in administration. We start addressing some of these issues, you start to bring down those costs, and that helps us reinvest back into healthcare. So look, we've all been doing this for a very, very long time, and when I think about actual solutions, I think this solves not everything, and I'm sure there'll be things that it creates, but it does start to solve access issues, burnout issues, quality of care issues. And I think, we do need to have a more open ecosystem. We do need to be able to share. And people are coming up with innovative ideas all the time, and they need to be able to share it. And if they want to monetize it, whatever that is, but we've got to have more sharing. That's going to bring up the level of quality and innovation all over the country.
Great.
Any other thoughts?
Well, I think there's a lot for our country to do, but your point about administrative cost is hugely important, and I think that's a very big policy and system issue for all of us to solve. But there's so many other pieces that we can continue to pick off. One of the models that we have in use at Mayo Clinic right now is for patients with head and neck cancer. And for those patients to get a radiation plan is very complex. Lots of important normal structures in the head and neck that have to be protected while you're trying to get appropriate doses of radiation to the tumor. So it used to take our radiation oncologists and physicists an average of 17 hours to contour a plan for those patients from the planning CT. We now have a model that automates that. And they now spend 1 hour quality controlling it, making sure it's exactly right, it fits that particular patient's goals, and then can implement it. So it's a more consistent quality, as you said, but it's also 17 times more efficient. And now you start to think about scaling that and make the quality level across the country and ultimately across the world at that higher level and do it at 1/17 the work effort. And then you multiply that by thousands of those models and hundreds of thousands of those models, and you start to get a little hope that we can start to make inroads with getting that higher level of quality and starting to bend that cost curve such that healthcare becomes more affordable.
Yeah, the affordability is a key issue. I think this is something that we have to get out of this circle of cross-subsidizing, and that is not sustainable. And technology is just a wonderful opportunity to do that. And I think it's another interesting thing that we in our field in healthcare have failed to do is, we are very, very good in understanding of what are the individual competencies that our caregivers, physician, nurses have to have in order to be able to take care of a patient. We have not really defined the collective competencies that healthcare organizations or group practices need to have in order to provide really good care of our patients. And I do believe that technological solutions will help us democratize the process of excellence and hopefully bring a scalable excellence in healthcare to many more organizations, because we're extremely fragmented in the United States from the provider standpoint. And I think it is just a wonderful opportunity to bring excellence in care to many caregivers as well as to many, many more patients in the United States.
I mean, we haven't even touched on image analysis today.
Yeah, that's what Michelle talked about, right?
Michelle talked about
images.
that.
Yeah.
The first issue of Nature in 2020 had an article that said that an image analysis system was, I think, 10 or 13 absolute percentage points better at diagnosing breast cancer on mammograms than a highly trained radiologist. You can get your entire genome sequenced for what, $100, $200 now? Think about the amount of data that's coming from proteomics. You said it in your opening remarks. We're drowning in data and starving for knowledge. I think, I echo what Tom and Rick and Stephanie had said, I think the future is going to be some kind of platform that integrates this and pulls it together. Otherwise, we're just going to be guddling around in these individual disparate systems that don't talk to each other and will never realize the full potential of what's ahead of us. That's what we have to do. It was Michelle's plea. So a platform that can do that, that's, I think, the next frontier.
I would say my final question for you would be, we take measured risk as we lead towards the future, and some will say AI is dangerous, and my response to that would be that anything that is new appears dangerous and scary. And although there's aspects of AI that we have to caution, what most excites you about the future? And in your role at Oracle, I could say, and a partner, I'm looking for the most innovative, bold thinker in this space. What excites you?
Well, what excites me is that this is solving problems, right? It's actually doing something, right? It's not a piece of legislation that's going to take 3 years to get through. It's not throwing more money at the system. It's actually a tangible solution. And I think about patients like Michelle, You think about what she was talking about. Aiden is alive today because she worked really hard and did all this research by herself. It was by chance that he got connected with the clinical trial. And we shouldn't allow somebody's life to depend on chance, right? That should be systemized. And it should have been clear to her, these are the clinical trials that he qualifies for. So I think that we're going to save a lot of lives. I'm also super excited about the new era of innovation and new cures and new treatments, because you start pulling all that data together. Think about the amount of data that's in Aiden's record, 15 years. There's probably 1 in 2 million, right? There aren't, but if we took all of the cancer survivors, the long-term survivors, and we brought all the records together and then we applied AI, there's probably some secrets in there, to your point, right? You know, with the seizure medication, right? There are things that we are just not seeing, and there's an incredible opportunity to prove the human condition. That's what I'm most excited about.
That's why when I'm asked, why did you stay with Oracle? That's why. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you all for being here. Excited about your thoughts, and I'm excited that you are thinking about AI, you're embracing AI, and we look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.